Aloha from Hawaii. Once again, this is Gabe Morales with Gangsters, Cops, and Politicians. If you like our channel, please hit the like and subscribe button. Very important so we get our subscribers up. YouTube rates us on the amounts of hits and subscribers that we get as far as showing us in priority on YouTube channels. So today we have a guest who has a specialty as far as covering far-right extremists and white supreme power groups. He was associated with the FBI Violent Crimes Task Force before he retired, worked with them. He's also the founder of the Skinhead Intelligence Network, which started off small but is now international in scope. Please help me welcome Mr. Matt Browning. How are you today, sir?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing okay. Kind of hectic here, but running around, but getting things done. Thank you very much. So, Matt, tell us, where were you born and where did you grow up?
Born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona. And I've been here ever since. I live outside of Phoenix, so I'm a native.
All right. Is it kind of hot there today? I heard you guys had a little heat wave.
Oh, we had 70-mile-an-hour winds the other day, and now we're sitting about 105 maybe, so it's normal.
Wow. Okay, so Matt, while you were growing up, did you ever encounter any far-right extremists or supreme white power groups?
You know what? I did not. It was crazy. I never even knew that stuff existed until one day I was on Central Avenue, and I saw a bunch of guys marching down the street with the swastika flag, and that was about it. And that was when I was probably 20 years old. I saw that. So no, never had any dealings with them at all.
Okay. Well, I know Phoenix is a very, diverse community, and of course, you get bad apples anywhere where you're at, but that's not unusual in most places of the country that, there's just a few
Right.
that, cause grief for the rest of us. So tell us, where did you start your law enforcement career?
I was hired by the Mesa Police Department just outside of Phoenix. It's a city outside of Phoenix, and that's where I spent my 20 years with Mesa.
Gotcha. Now, Mesa, if I remember it, man, it didn't used to be that big, but it's pretty big nowadays, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's big, like third largest city in Arizona, I believe. So
Wow.
it's big. A lot of stuff goes on in Mesa.
All right. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been down there. I taught for the Arizona Gang Investigators Association a few years ago, and have visited some friends down there in Arizona, but it's been a while since I passed through the beautiful country. So why did you start the Skinhead Intelligence Network, Matt?
Well, when I started working the white power, the skinhead scene, and I was undercover, it was really hard to pass along information and to find the people who were working the white boys, because pretty much everybody was working Hispanic and black gangs, and out of Phoenix and the surrounding areas. So quite honestly, I got tired of it, and I put together a little group. I figured that we have the monthly meetings for your Hispanic gangs, the monthly meetings for your bikers. So I said, what the heck, I'm going to do one for white boys, and just named it Skinhead Intelligence Network, and started with maybe 5 or 6 guys showing up, and it just grew from there.
Wow. Well, it definitely was an idea that people needed, a great resource. And so I know you track a lot of different groups, Matt, over the years, whether it's been in your law enforcement career or through SIN. Can you tell us some of the groups that seem to be most active right now in recent times?
Oh, right now it's a different world now because of where we're at. Back when I started, it was all Volksfront, the Hammers, Creators, Aryan Nations, the Klan, a bunch of local groups like Unit 88 Skins, AZ White Boys, Boot Boys. Of course, out of California, you had your Peni and things like that, and you throw your prison gangs into it. But it's all different now. It's like the internet has changed everything. The mentality has changed. The focus of what people want to do has changed, and so it's almost like the days of boots and braces is over, and now it's moving more towards your militant guys indoctrinated online, and then hooking up with Adam Waffen or the base, and these organizations that are international. And then you
Gotcha.
throw in your border groups and your militias along with that, and it's just a recipe for destruction.
Gotcha. So it sounds like it used to be a lot more different organized groups, and now you have a lot of lone wolves who may band together with other lone wolves, uh, being called
Yeah,
via the internet, like what happened maybe in Washington D.C. in January, something like that. Is that what we're talking about?
well, January was a little different. Back in the day, there was your Volksfront was run by Randy Krager. You had your Vinlanders that were run by Brian James. You had Aryan Nations, Richard Butler. You had White Revolution and Billy Roper. You had all these different crews that had an actual leader. And now there is no real actual leader. And so because it's leaderless, they're going more online. And like you just said, they're hooking up online. Um, and then you had a guy like Richard Spencer who tried to unite everybody under one banner and brought everybody to Charlottesville. And we all know what happened there. And then you have what happened in January at the Capitol, which was pretty much anybody that could get to the Capitol on the far right extreme side got to the Capitol. And you had your militia groups, you had your border activists, you had your racist skinheads, you had your Christian identity folk, anybody on that far right that could get there got there, and you could see what happens when they band together, and you have thousands of people just storming the Capitol.
Right. Well, I know there was a lot of I heard a lot of talk of that being, actually far left extremists that were fronting as far right extremists. It seems like conspiracies are real big, no matter where it's far left or far
Mhm.
right. It seems like more and more people distrust the government in general. And I've met a lot of people who are not even affiliated with these extremist groups that just really not happy with the government. And of course, uh, I got a lot of complaints about the government too, but it's just it's kind of strange. I see it more vocal, not as many
Mhm.
people taking action, but of course, some people then it's not just talking about conspiracies; they actually act on it and seem to take it to the next level, whether it be mass shootings or insurrections. It is kind of scary, and I think you're right. Things have changed. So, um, has there ever been a case that you worked, Matt, that you thought, man, this is not going good? I'm not sure how I'm going to deal with this one. Is there anyone
I,
that stands out in mind more than others?
well, I think that in all my cases, my time undercover here in the Valley, locked up, I believe, 18 skinheads for murder or attempted murder. Um, and so I actually, my wife and I were talking the other day about this very question, and it's almost every incident because you're going into a situation where they're murderers. You're going into a situation where you know that they live in the extreme side of life. So if they think God is telling them to do something, then they are going to do it. You have people who believe that if they commit an act of violence in the name of their God or in the name of protecting the Constitution, then they will be saved in Valhalla or in the heavens or whatever religious twist you want to put into it. So it's almost like, man, every time you go into one of these situations and you're sitting in a room full of ex-con shaved head white boys, with more tattoos than you can read, who are spewing their hatred towards the Mexicans and the blacks and the Jews. I think I sat back more and thought, what am I doing here? Than I thought, I'm glad that I'm here. Um,
Yeah. Well, it's real hard to fight, with logic when you're dealing with people saying, "Hey, it's me and God against them."
and that's how it
What
is
do you
now.
what do you tell somebody like that? I'm on a mission from God. Almost sounds like out of the Blues Brothers, but really, they a lot of these guys, like you said, actually truly have come to believe that this is the truth, and other people are living a lie, or you know, are actually the anti-government people, and they are the pro, government and pro people fighters, freedom fighters. It is really kind of strange to listen. I have sat down with some white supremacists myself, and would tell me that hey, it says right here in the Bible,
Right.
uh, uh, minorities are seed of Satan, mud people, and I'm like, what? Let me look at that. It's their interpretation of what
Exactly.
is said, but they truly believe that. And yeah,
Yeah.
minorities or Jews or whoever is the enemy, it's really hard to argue against that.
Well, yeah, and I think back there was I went to a meeting, a Christian identity meeting at a church in Mesa, and I mean they're reading out of the book of John, and I know the Bible. I'm not an expert on the Bible, but I've read the Bible, and it's like, where in the world are you reading this? And so I grabbed the guy's Bible next to me and said, "Can you show me where you're reading that? You know, the spawn of Satan, and we need to get rid of all the blacks and the muds and everything else." And you're exactly right. It was their interpretation of what they believed that God was saying in code to them through the book of John. And if you go back, and I tell everybody now, if you ever run into anybody who claims to be a Phineas priest, turn around and get out of there, because that is a person who fully 100% has drank the Kool-Aid that says, if I commit an act of violence in the name of God, I go to heaven, you go to hell. And they are very violent people.
Yeah. Wow. So, Matt, if you were a young teen being approached by some of these radical extremist groups, supreme white power groups, religious extremist groups, what kind of advice would you have for them to try to avoid being sucked into this ideology?
Well, I think the big thing is, number one, in order to be approached or indoctrinated by these people, it's usually either going to be a family member or a close friend or something that you do online yourself. First of all, if you're doing it online yourself and you're a young teen, I would tell you, dude, get a hobby, man. Go work on a car, go play sports, have good associations and friends. Get involved with things that bring happiness and peace, not just to your life, but to the lives around you. That's the only way we're going to get rid of the hate in this world. Um, I would say, as I would sit down, I sat down and talked to a sixth grader, believe it or not, who was drawing swastikas on his notebook. And the school called me in to talk to him. And so we sat and talked about Hitler, and he started telling me conspiracy theories and stuff. And I basically said, if I told you all of this was false, what would you do? And it was that little tiny seed of doubt that put in his mind, and he quit. A sixth grader was smart enough to still know what right and wrong is. And that's what I would tell these guys. Look at the right, look at the wrong. If you're truly believing on a religious aspect, God taught that we love everybody and we don't hurt people. So everything you're doing is wrong. And so that's where I'd start with the young guys. Get a hobby, man. Go play football or something. If you got that much anger, go wrestle. Go lift weights. Do something productive with your life.
Gotcha. So that's a good warning for parents that are out there. There's a lot of these groups that are out there. They're very manipulative. They're very good at telling kids what they want to hear, getting friendship, getting close to them. Um, sexual predators do the same thing with child victims. They groom them. So just beware of that if you're a parent. Monitor what your teen is looking at, because these people will convince them eventually to join, a lot of them, unless they've been taught morals, like you said, right from wrong, and to question things, question everything for themselves, what is real and what is not. So, Matt, we had joked about before we came on the air about, hey, I learned, when we had a chalkboard at the academy, and I don't know, maybe you were there when they had an overhead, but I remember that was a high tech jump when they went to the overhead, and the markers. But now it's a brand new world, not just for these groups, but for officers out there working them. What kind of advice would you have for a brand new recruit coming straight out of the academy, as far as working these groups or just working with the public? It's a different world for a lot of police officers. There's a lot of anti-cop types, whether it be on the right or far left these days. What kind of advice would you give that new officer?
The best advice I can give is, my gang sergeant back in the day was a guy named John Mason. You probably know Johnny, but John told me, he said, dude, just talk to these guys. My advice to anybody going in any law enforcement is two things. Number one, just talk to them and treat them like they're human, and don't be an ass. If it's in the gang life, is the respect. They respect you when you respect them. And so by talking to them and treating them like they're humans, you'll get all the information you need to get. And at some point, you might twist a guy or turn a guy from being just a guy on the street to being an informant for you, or even luckily, hopefully, getting out of the scene altogether. So my advice to any recruit coming out is just, you know what? Stop the patrol car, get out of your car, and talk
Right.
to anybody.
Well, we can, we can always plant that seed in their head. Um, Earlier on Gangsters, Cops, and Politicians, we did a memorial for TJ Layden, the recent TJ who passed, and good friend to all of us. He was one of those persons who turned and educated all of us on the skinhead movement and white supremacy in general. And you're right. I mean, there's other TJs out there that were hardcore skinheads that can come back to reality and become a good part of society and educate us in law enforcement, like you said. So yeah, I always look at it that way. I always said, hey, show them a ounce of dignity, you should get a pound of respect back in return.
Oh yeah.
So this last question, Matt's probably the toughest one out of the three I've asked you now here. If you were a politician today and you were aware of all the things you know today as far as extremists in society, supreme white power types, all the different groups that you dealt with, what kind of changes in laws and policies would you make to try to combat these kind of guys?
Well, first of all, I think I would tell politicians the same thing my parents have said to me and my wife has said to our kids, and that's your words hurt. Whatever you say hurts people. And that's my message to politicians. Quit being so freaking stupid and quit arguing nonstop and calling this person or that person whatever name you want to call them. Be adults, walk across that dividing aisle line that everybody always talks about and talk. The problem we have in the far right now is because these groups and these kids and these organizations are following the examples of the people that we elect into office. And if the politicians in Congress or the Senate or even the president isn't talking, then these groups bite on everything that these far fringes will have, because there's no truth anywhere. We have to work together. The policy would be work together. I don't know how basic it is. Work together.
Yeah, it used to be that way in politics. Republicans and Democrats would come to a compromise, and you just hear so much about them, just stalling.
Yeah.
Very little gets done, and I think you're right. The far right and far left activists will just pounce on anything they do or don't do to use it as another reason for why they're doing their thing. Even newscasters, I remember Walter Cronkite, bless his soul, rest in peace, he used to tell the news without putting his personal opinion on everything.
Right.
We have become so divided. It doesn't matter whether far left or far right, it seems like. And you're right. It'd be a lot better if we walk the talk, and be an example to the young kids too that are coming up, because they do watch.
Oh
They
yeah.
may not think they know much, but they're paying attention to everything.
That's a good point, is that I tell my kids, my kids are football players, and so it's like I tell them, when you play football in high school, you're best friends with your team. There's every nationality that's playing football, and you are friends with these people. But what happens from the time you leave high school and go on in life, that now you hate these people that you would die for on the field for? It makes no sense. And a lot of that is because they get more involved in in the political aspects of life because they're getting older. Their eyes are being, open to whatever's going on around them, and they have a choice. They can either lean to the left, to the right, and I think this whole middle ground we're missing, because in the ground is where you find the truth. The extremes are not going to give you the truth. If you go far enough left and far enough right, you're going to touch each other. And they're the same thing. The far left is no different from the far right. We need to get back to the middle ground and have conversations.
Well, thank you, brother. I agree with that too. So, that is my biased opinion. It'd be nice if, yeah, we talk to each other a little more, a little less name calling, getting a little more work done. And man, I sure hope I do pray and hope that we see more of that in the future. Is there anything else you'd like to add here, Matt, before we close today?
I think the last thing I would say is law enforcement is the same. Sin started for communication. I started sin so officers will talk to each other. Even federal officers will talk to local guys, and local guys will talk to federal guys. That's the purpose for sin, is to talk. We've put together cases where we've gone to England and helped guys from Scotland Yard shut down organizations there. We have guys in Canada that we talk to all the time, and it's through communication that crime is solved. One
Right on.
guy, intel that is not used is worthless information. It just sits on your desk or in your computer. Share that information. Let's solve some crimes, and let's put some bad guys in jail, and let's actually go out and save some people from being bad guys.
All right. So do you have a website that's available online, or how can people get a hold of you?
Get a hold of me. You can just email at Skinhead Intelligence Network at gmail.com. Shoot me an email. We can talk on the phone. We can do whatever. We try to keep, because of what we work, it seems like we're targeted all the time. It's like another hit came out on me a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
So it's like, so we try to keep it real tight and real close. And
Right.
and I'm real protective of the guys I work with.
Of
And
course.
so shoot me an email and let's talk, and then we'll go from there.
Yes. I can totally understand the need to vet, people as they come in, but if they're found out to be legit, and I'm sure you do a quick background check on their credentials, and if they're doing it for the right purposes, I'm sure you'll assist them as you've assisted me and many others.
Sure.
Well, thank you, Matt, for coming on the show today. If you're ever here on the Big Island, look me up. I'll give you the local boy tour. Okay, if you get tired of the heat over there in Arizona, it's been, I think this week around 80 all week long. It don't get too cold, don't get too hot.
Yeah.
Look me up, okay?
I'll do it, Gabe. Thank you.
All right, brother.
All right.
Okay,
See you, man.
bye-bye.